Happy Tuesday, everyone. Goodness gracious, we have had a couple of what is it? We had a couple of I'll call them bye weeks. We had a couple of bye weeks, the superintendent search, the special meetings were actually being held during our meetings. So I was like, you know what? Let's focus in on what's happening with the superintendent search. If you have not been following it, we'll talk a little bit about where we are now because we are in a new space. Before we get into that, thank you to everyone who joins us. Yeah. Thank you to everyone who joins us on Tuesdays. Please note that there will be some Tuesdays when we may reschedule or we're going to cancel the show so that we can participate in whatever is happening in the community. My name is Camila Bywaters. I'm currently the co-chair for the Las Vegas Alliance of Black School Educators. Tracy Lewis is the co-chair, and we also chair together the National Association for Equal Justice in America. And Pastor Giddens is the one who wanted Tracy and I to take over that organization here in Las Vegas, which was the reason why we were able to establish a relationship with the EEOC. Soon we will be reconnecting with the EEOC and see what's happening during this current administration that we have going on and checking in to see what their work is looking like, if it's any at all.
Still an EEOC?
Right, if there's any at all. So we'll keep you updated on that. We're supposed to be reaching out, and this is on me because my schedule is a little bit hectic, but we are, I'm supposed to be sharing my schedule with the team in California so they can let us know like what some of the changes are that have been happening in our state. So I'm going to go ahead and let my co-host introduce himself, and then we're going to get started talking about some of these hot topics that are just slapping us across the face here in this here United States of America. Because if you haven't been following, there's just a lot of just things that are pinching and biting at us. And we'll talk about that in a second.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Rodney Smith. I like to say I'm one of the hugest fans of Miss Camila Bywaters outside of her family. And because I'm figuring they probably have more oomph to it than me because of blood. But if it wasn't for that, I would be her number one fan.
Absolutely.
She ran for school board trustee, and we like to say she's the community trust school board trustee at large, making things happen. If you didn't hear her commentary, her speech at the school board meeting, you all missed out.
Did you hear it, Mr. Rodney? You were listening?
It was like, boom, throw in another one, boom, throw in another one. So, but she's passionate about what she does, which brings people like me out to support her. And this show is about education. And maybe one of the things that I like about her most is she said she was a person for education, representing the community. And though she ran a campaign and did not come out on top, she didn't go anyplace. She's still in the fight. She was in the fight before she ran. She ran so she could fight even more. But even though she wasn't victorious, she is still in the fight. That's the testament to who she said she was and who she actually is. So we're going to get into some education stuff tonight. I hope you all will share it on Facebook and let other folks know that we're on, and let's get busy.
Okay, y'all, I was trying to get my prepare to be on the Facebook to text people, but that was giving me some feedback. Y'all, Okay, so if you don't know, I am working on my dissertation. I think I say this every time. And when it is time for me to do my final defense, I feel like everyone's going to be invited because we have been on this train for decades now. So just to give you an update, I had decided that I was not going to be as present as I have been in the community because I do need to finish my dissertation. So I've committed myself. I pick and choose what events I can attend. So I've been at home working on my dissertation, which I finally turned in chapters 1 and 3. All right. So now that those chapters are turned in, I will be defending those chapters or defending my proposal that I want to do for my study. And I'll do that on March 31st. And then once I'm approved for that to move to the next step, I will start my study. But in the meantime, while I have been on my working on my dissertation, I've been listening to the school board meetings. I've been listening to public comment, and some of them have just really been so disheartening. You know, I know a specific public commenter, a white supremacist, comes up and she always blames Black single women, mothers, and Black people for the downfall of society, right? And I'm just sitting and I'm thinking, well, someone's going to come up and give another narrative. Yeah, surely someone will provide another narrative. Like someone in our community is going to stand up and just give, another narrative, right? And I'm listening and I'm like, okay, I do want to give a big shout out to Anna. I think she does a great job of pushing back, but it can't just be one or two people. Like we really have to have a consistent movement of people fighting back against these white supremacist ideologies and narratives that are coming across the airwaves. And why do we need to do that? Just imagine if all you hear is the yak yak bum folio madness, and that's what people hear. Our students are listening. People are listening on the airwaves, and they're thinking, well, who's speaking up on my behalf, So I'm literally like writing my dissertation and like fumes are coming out of me. And even across the dais, Lorena, she has said many things about diversity, equity, and inclusion negatively. And I'm thinking, well, who's going to push back against her? Anybody? And, I'm not saying to start a fight, but you got to say something. Students are listening. People are listening who may not have, who are maybe don't have the ability to come speak out at a school board meeting, who, I think some people don't have the courage. I mean, you just have to be real about it. Or some people may not have the courage and are in fear of doing that. But to me, it is absolutely important to present our story in the way that it should be said. So when I came to that school board meeting, I don't know if you were able to hear the public comment. I do have my public comment cut, so I am going to play it across the social media and wherever. But I had been basically bottling up a response for months because I am not hearing anyone push back on ideologies, thoughts, and ideas that are designed to put Black people and non-Black people of color in their place. And if we are silent, and white supremacists want us to be silent because they want their message to be the only message that is heard. So I was like, look, I'm coming through here. If you want to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, before you talk to me about diversity, equity, inclusion, and anybody being a DEI hire, run down your resume first. Do that first. And I do know that there are some white people who have degrees and all that things. Great. They're still talking ignorant. But then there's a whole lot of them who do a whole lot of yapping and have nothing to show for it.
Yapping.
So before you run down your resume, all right? So that was really, and I think as I'm watching my independent media, there is a lot of concern. Like people are like, well, who's speaking up? Like who's trying to really save democracy out here? But I do want to give a big shout out because I know that there are some organizations, I don't have all of their names. There are attorney generals who are fighting back by doing lawsuits against some of these executive orders and the things that we are seeing happening that are unconstitutional, right? We have some judges who are pushing back. We found ourselves in a constitutional crisis, which we will talk about in regards to the flight that left with the Venezuelan so-called gang members. They were ordered not to fly and they flew anyway. So it's like, okay, where are we with that? But anywho, that's kind of, if we don't say anything about it or strategize about what's happening, we're just going to be a mist in the wind. We will be. And I'm hoping that, just through our conversation today, that we can spread some light on some things that are happening. I do have some things I want to share that are happening in education, and then just globally in regards to politics. And then us thinking about what are we supposed to do as individuals, as groups, and as communities, to, I don't know, get through these years that we're in. In CCSD news, and after this, Mr. Rodney, feel free to jump in whenever. Hey, Miss Amy and the General, thank you so much for joining us. In CCSD news, we have finally,
Drum roll, please.
Drum roll with a 7-0 vote, y'all. A 7-0 vote. Superintendent Joan Ebert, she was the State Department of Education.
Woo!
What is it? Superintendent for the state. Now she's going to be the superintendent for the Clark County School District. Y'all, I had UNLV reporters were calling me about UNLV. Then they called me about Superintendent Joan Ebert. So I was doing all kinds of interviews. And, you know, they were like, how are you feeling? I'm like, well, I'm in line. I'm not going to start out negative. You know, we're not starting out negative. We're starting off positive. Our community has been asking for a superintendent, a new person who can lead the district forward, who can be innovative. And the first question they asked me was that Superintendent Joan Ebert was talking about increasing the school day for students. And I, you know, and I know that that's controversial, but I'm like, hey, I grew up playing soccer. And if I wanted to be a better soccer player, I had to put the time in. And the same thing goes with our academics. So, hey, I think that we wanted somebody who would be innovative, bring new ideas, and try things differently. I think we need to give it a shot and see what we can do to improve our students. Listen, when I first started teaching high school, I loved high school because I loved the hours. Like we were out by 1 p.m. But then I started thinking, why are kids who are failing out of school at 12 o'clock? If you're a senior and you're failing, you should not be getting out of school at 12 and 1 o'clock. I'm sorry. So I think there's some things that we need to think about. And, you know, we have to try something new. And I do believe that Superintendent Joan Ebert, that she has the capacity to work with a very divided community. In my opinion, our community is divided on so many different issues. So one, we need to still hold her accountable. And I believe that we have an educational community in regards to CCSD. Like we have a community of people, even though it's a small group, who really do the thing when it comes to holding and highlighting the things that are happening in CCSD. So congratulations to Superintendent Ebert. We look forward to the work. It will be hard work, but it will be joyful work. And we are just excited to be a part of this new beginning in the Clark County School District.
And we should look at this as a win. It's not just that she is there. And it's not just that she got a 7-0 vote, even though that's important because it shows a unanimous board. And it's been a while since we've really had a unanimous board. So that's a good sign for the superintendent. But it's a win because you all with LAVAPSI, NASIA, and other organizations that you have been able to corral have pushed for Superintendent Ebert to get the job. She's someone who knows our district, knows our community. She's been in touch and in contact with our district and our community. So she's not a stranger to us. And as far as the extended school day, I'm actually all for it. When you're behind, you know, you don't tell your team, okay, we're not going to practice. Nah, it's just the opposite. We're going to put some more time in. We're going to try some different drills, build up some skills. We're going to do some things to add to what we have to try to improve our game, right? So it's not like the children have something to do when they go home. They don't get homework a lot of times anymore. So the time that would normally have been spent doing homework, now they can maybe spend it doing schoolwork or getting some type of tutoring that they need that they wouldn't get otherwise. Maybe this is an opportunity to look at doing block scheduling so that children can get that extra time in the math class and in reading, which are the fundamentals of everything else that we do. So if that's what she chooses to do, I'm actually all for it.
Absolutely. And there actually are, schools have the autonomy to determine their schedule. So there are some schools that have block scheduling, like an hour and a half class. And then there are some schools that do like 45 minutes. So we'll see what that's going to look like as we, as Superintendent Ebert moves our district forward with that conversation. Goodness gracious, some things that we are holding accountable is we want to see more representation in the cabinet level. Absolutely. Right
We
now,
need it.
I think it's one voice. And you know what? There's this young man who follows politics, and oh goodness, he cusses like a sailor. And I I can't remember his name, but he's actually very popular. He was at the state of the WAC union, and he was in the back interviewing some of the congressional leaders.
Mm.
And so I know everyone's upset about Chuck Schumer and his vote.
Got that right.
But you know what, y'all? He's not the only one who voted. There's like 6 other ones, and I believe somebody from Nevada voted too.
Catherine Cortez Matos.
Yes. So people are not happy about, and I need to go get, oh my goodness, I meant to have the bill today so we could talk about what's in the bill. It was a funding bill. So the government was going to shut down if Democrats and Republicans couldn't get it together. So the community is literally outraged that Chuck Schumer kind of went off
the reservation.
He went off, so I don't know where he went, along with some other people who voted to approve the Republican funding bill, which is going to impact a lot of people. Like funding is going to be, we're going to be impacted. So now Chuck Schumer did come on and he was like, it's bad. He was like, this is bad it's a bad vote. But in his opinion, he believed that it was better than not having the government shut down. So I think we can have that discussion. But here's what the young man said, my point that I was making. The young man who covers politics, he was saying, this is why we need representation. Because when we don't have representation, he specifically was saying Black people, we don't have people fighting up for us. And I was like, well, I guess you're right about that. Representation matters, because if people don't understand or feel what you're going through, it may be a little bit harder for them to have that empathy to say, hey, it may not impact me, but it impacts you enough where I need to say something. And when that young man said that, it was really like a ding, ding, ding for me, because he was like, people step up. Like, I'm sorry, white people, if you're not a part of this white supremacy, we need you to step up and we need you to fight for us. And when everything is not out in the open, like the same thing I say with the Clark County School District Board of School Trustees, the meeting that we see on Wednesdays at their board meetings, that's not it, y'all. I need to know that you're fighting for us in the back room during your closed door session. That's where the fight is happening, and the advocacy, that's where it's happening. And that's where decisions are also made. If you want to believe it or not, decisions are made there as well. Okay. Ideologies are being presented. So if you're coming to the meeting unprepared, you don't know what's going on, then you're not doing the job that the people voted you in. People voted you in to represent them. And you can't represent me, at least, in silence. You just can't.
So the thing about, I'm glad you mentioned that the Thursday meeting is not the meeting. It is a meeting that the public is in. It's the one that gets all the attention. But usually by the time you get to that meeting, the decision of the school board trustees, believe it or not, most of the time they're locked in. They've already decided what their vote's going to be. To a certain extent, it's a dog and pony show for all of us. Rarely do you see the vote change during the standard meeting. I've seen it a couple of times, but that was because some well-organized individuals from Henderson, they even bought a paid organizer to organize them, And I think they kept the meeting going until 2 o'clock in the morning or something crazy like that to kind of force the hand of the trustees. But rarely do the trustees change their vote from what they have decided in those back rooms. That
Right.
is a rarity. So
Right.
when you see them walk out to that dais, pretty much all of the agenda item votes that they're going to do, they already know how they're going to vote. Now, one thing that you may see if things get to the point where they're thinking about maybe changing their vote, and this is the telltale sign, they'll take a recess sort of out of nowhere.
Right.
Well, they're taking that recess because they see something in the crowd. And this is why going to those meetings do make a difference. If you go to those meetings, you're organized, you have your messaging down,
Right.
you have your supporters there with you, they can feel it, especially if there's a bunch of calls that's going in, a bunch of emails and text messages and social media posts. They will feel it. And even more that they have the added members, they're non-voting members, I believe, still, but they're getting those emails too from their constituencies that sometimes cross the trustees' constituents base. And so then they're putting pressure on them. So showing up does make a difference, but most times the decisions are made by the time we get to the Thursday meeting.
Absolutely. That, yeah, my sentiment is the same. Hey, you know, y'all better stop playing with me. Elizabeth is over here sending me stars, y'all. Gosh, thank you so much, Elizabeth. You don't understand. You are the first person who's sending me stars, and she's sending me a lot. She sent me 20, then 100, then 99 cents. Yes, you better do that. And big shout out to Courtney, who's also watching on Facebook Live. You all, thank you so much for joining us. And also make sure that you're liking our page, that you're subscribing or joining our pages, all of our pages. That's Mr. Rodney's and myself. And we are going to get started. We're going to be doing YouTube too soon once I can get my stuff set up. But please listen, we're going all out because there's no better time than now to have, we need our voices out here and we need to be heard. And, you know, sharing information is, as long as I hear that there was a executive order on the media. So I got to look into more of that. But as long as we can push it to the wheels fall off. But thank you so much for those who join in and really are in, you know, trying to understand and learn what's happening in education.
You know, folks, here's a reality. If somebody is pushing you and you don't push back, they're going to push you over.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to push you back and or they're going to push you over. And when they push you over, they're going to run over. And for too long, we have sort of been playing nice, been very, very extremely conciliatory, right? Well, if a bully can take your milk, it won't be long before he has your dessert and the whole meal.
Yep.
And so, you know, Dr. King says a man cannot ride your back unless it's bent. And former President Joe Biden says we need to get some steel in our backbone. So I'm encouraging all people. It's not over. Yes, there's some bad things that's happened, but it's not over. As long as we have the ability and the will to fight, it's not over. And they want you to think that they've beaten you, that you're defeated. But those are skirmishes, those are battles. It's not the final victory for the war. It's far from over unless you give up. And I'm saying don't give up. If you see something that isn't right, that's a lie, then call them out on it. Bring the fact, not just opinion. Bring the fact. We need more facts.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me tell you what Elizabeth just said. She said she is joining us from New Mexico, trying to get her activists together in her community. And she says to us, thank you so much for what you're doing for CCSD students. You don't even understand like how tingly my heart just got. Like, oh my God, we reach in New Mexico. Oh my goodness, that makes me so like, Elizabeth, please let us know if you want to, we can do some like Zoom meetings and let me tell you how we really build momentum. LAVAPSI started building momentum during the pandemic, and we built we Vote Nevada with Dr. Cosgrove, with Evelyn Pacheco. We were literally like on Zoom calls trying to figure things out and just doing advocacy through Zoom, y'all. My mom would sit there and be like, Camila, what are you guys doing? I'm like, I don't know, but it's happening. And we really were able to mobilize our community, talk about education during the pandemic over Zoom. And it helped us to build so much momentum. One thing that was so important to me is whenever LAVAPSI did a presentation, what I did is I noticed what people were doing and we did the opposite. So if you were coming to a meeting with no presentation, I had presentations, I had slides, I had resources and statistics. And people would say, oh, Camila, I'm going to meetings and no one has this. And I'm thinking, well, they should. And that helped us to stand out a little bit. And then another thing that we did, Elizabeth, is what we started doing was meeting with our congressional leaders, our state leaders, and we started having conversations about education. And that helped us to also build credibility. Also attending school board meetings. That's our lane. Our lane is school board meetings, but we will attend city council meetings if, and county commissioner meetings, like whatever your community is able to do. But the main thing is you just start with whatever you can with the people that you have, with the coalition of the willing, and you just start little by little, and then you'll be surprised at how much momentum you'll get over time. I promise you, because that's exactly how we did it. We were just persistent and consistent in what we were doing and making sure that, we were professional. And sometimes, if we need to get a little bad about it, we do too. But, and this is why, so Tracy and I, for decades, we've been shut out of conversations. People have done things to go against what we're fighting for. So it really is a sweet moment for this superintendent to be chosen at this time, because we know that, one, this will be a great opportunity for our students to begin to feel a change in their learning, and also for the adults too. Now, I don't think that any person is perfect. No one's Superintendent Ebert is not perfect, but we're going to hold her accountable and, do the work that we need to do to have a better school system. Yep, Elizabeth, for sure. I'm going to make sure that you have my email and my phone number as well, and we can definitely get together. So we're making connections in Arizona, y'all. We're going to be zooming it away. But anywho, that makes me feel so good. But I wanted to let you all know, because like you said, Rodney, now this is my opinion. Tell me if you agree. I feel like we as Black people have been very nice and kind. And I don't feel, and I'm going to talk specifically about our community in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I don't feel that we've spoken up for ourselves in a collective way with boldness, demanding that we just be seen as equal partners in society. And I feel that we, as a people who have come from slaves, like our people were enslaved and we were slaves in the United States of America, we could be tearing this place up and down like no other. And I wonder if that's the fear that white people have. But I'm like, we haven't really, I mean, yeah, we've had our slave, there were some slave revolts, and there were some things that we've had where people have spoken up and protested, but the hatred that we could have, we don't. The revenge that we could do to people, we don't. And I feel like we've been very is it lackadaisical? I don't know, just kind of like, what are we doing?
I don't, so I'm not going to say that it was lackadaisical. What I'm going to say is, and especially being a child that grew up during the end of the civil rights movement, what we've always just wanted to be left alone. And once we were here, and because some of the founding values of this country are actually things that came directly from Africa. So a lot of times we associate it with European ideology, but the Europeans took it from Africa, right? The Greeks, they didn't create it. They got it from Africa. places like Timbuktu and Shanghai, places like that, which were the centers of learning, knowledge in the ancient world. That's where the Greek scholars went to learn. And then they just documented the concepts that we call democracy,
Yeah.
modern philosophy. That all came from Africa. So it's really ours. So some of those founding principles of this country fell right in line with some of the slave memories of Africa. So when we were freed in this country, those things that were, oh yeah, freedom and all of these things that supposedly this country stood for, that never really did, but we did. See, everything that this country says it was, which it wasn't, but we were, and we still are. And so it wasn't lackadaisical. It was just that finally things have fallen into place. Now we're going to get back to the business of all of us living, right? And progressing. But it was always, unfortunately, that segment of white society that's always been racist. There's always been white supremacists, right? And even though there was a point when we were able to kind of silence them to a certain extent, we never really got rid of them. And maybe to our chagrin, we should have put our foot on their necks a little bit more. As a matter of fact, 2020 hindsight, right? There's things that we could have done. We could have improved education to ensure that we were included in it decades ago, because we're still not included in it today. Right. And they're trying to erase the little bit that we had. I just read that they took Medgar Evers, erased him from the DOD. Remember at Iwo Jima when those, I think it was 4 or 5 guys raised the American flag? Well, I believe one of them was a Native American, might have even been a code talker, Navajo code talker. They've removed him because he's not white. So for the people who say that this is not about race and that it's not white supremacy, well, why is it that all of the people that are being removed happen to be non-white people? The last chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General C.Q. Brown, my son was just in D.C. and he was at the Pentagon. They have erased every vestige of his existence. You know, they have the walls that shows all of the secretaries from the very first one. They took him down.
That's horrible.
They're removing markers on gravestones at Arlington National Cemetery. War heroes. They are taking away their humanity. They're removing their culture. That's what's happening. So now they have proven that they are un-American, and we have proven that we have been more American than them even before we were citizens of this country. And I think that that's the part that maybe bothers them the most, is that they were never who they said that they were. Absolutely. And we have always been who they said they were. And that bothers them. We have never allowed them to really defeat us mentally and emotionally. They shackled our bodies, but they could never conquer this.
And goodness gracious. And this is like, we are in a culture war. And the point that I wanted to bring up, and the reason why I was bringing this up is like, okay, where are we as Black voices, Black leaders? Where are we?
Can we put a big old check mark on the Black leader part?
Yeah, we do. I know. What did we say? Because we talk about there's a difference between being a leader and then elected officials. So Black elected officials, where are we? Because like, and with Medgar Evers, that is not like trending across, it's not across the airwaves like it should be. And I know that there's things that are happening that are definitely unconstitutional, and I know that there's lawyers and there's laws being um to try to prevent these things. But what it's telling us is the mentality. It's telling us what the mentality and how they think about us as people. And because we are pulled into this culture war, a culture war is a conflict between groups with different cultural values, beliefs, and worldviews. We have been pulled into this culture war, you all, and we can't be silent. Like, and this is why I'm saying now more than ever, Black people, we have to say something. Now, this is what I'm not saying. I'm not saying, because I do feel that some of this can be like kind of like a setup to get Black people to, people are waiting on Black people to rise up and to protest. And then what? Trump's going to call, what is it? Like martial law. Like, I'm not telling us we need to be strategic and we need to know what we're doing, because we don't want to position ourselves in a place where we can just be unalived, right? So we have to be smart about it. But there are some opportunities, like now, just being here, having this conversation like we're doing. I feel like we're elevating Black thought, Black voices, Black narratives. And that's what we have to do so that people and students who are listening and young people who are kind of like trying to understand what's happening in 2025, that we give them that, listen, who you are, your values and your culture, it matters. And it's a very small population of the earth who are really going in this direction. And I do want us to talk about maybe next show or whatever, we need to talk about this cultic seduction of American society. Whether you believe it or not, millions of Americans are in a cult. They're in a cult. And we need to talk about what that is and how that's impacting them. Hey, Shaquilla.
So for years, I've been suggesting to people to watch a former TV show called The Following. And The Following's main character's name was Joe Carroll. And he was a person who had been incarcerated, but he had brainwashed some people. And the FBI, there's an FBI agent who's after him. And that's the antagonist. And so this show, I think it only lasted 2 seasons, but it showed how cults could be created and cultish behavior, how it manifests, and the impacts that it could have on society at large, and how the larger the cult and the more active it is, the more virulent it is, almost like a disease, an infection. And that's what we're seeing with Trumpism and MAGA, is cultish behavior. And because it's so widespread, it's spreading even more. It becomes virulent and or virulent, not sure the correct pronunciation, but that's what we're seeing here. And there's a bunch of shows. There's another show on, it came on in 2019 or 2020, and it's called The Plot Against America on HBO Max. If you all haven't seen that, and get you some popcorn, get you some root beer, and sit down with your partner under a blanket if you're in one of those cold places. It's only 6 episodes. The season and the entire series ran 6 episodes. And even though it's written about the 1930s, I believe, you would think they wrote it on November 5th.
Oh my goodness. What's the name of it again?
The Plot Against America.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it comes from the book by the same name, and it's often one of the books that's shared for people who want to get a better understanding of the historical context we're in compared to the rise of Adolf Hitler. And I did some research yesterday, and I looked at the events during Hitler's rise and compared it to 45's rise. And even though they're not identical, there's a lot of similarities. And so what I wanted to do was say, well, if this was the 20th century, using the timeline from Hitler's rise and comparing it to what's going on today, what year would we be in during the 20th century? And it came out to 1937. 1937 in Germany, is comparative to where we are in America today with the rise of 45. So that should give you some context on how big this is, because we know that after 1937, some even worse things happened compared to the things that had already happened. Like the final solution started being perfected. Just mass casualties, whether it was in the Ukraine, Russia, some of the same places that see in conflict today, but it was inflicted on them by Nazi Germany. But the biggest thing was the atrocities that happened. And you've heard me give the quote previously from Voltaire, is if you can get people to believe in absurdities, you can get them to commit atrocities. And if you listen to some of the people who responded to your comments at the school board and to your campaign, there's a lot of people who are absurd.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're already into the absurdity stage,
Mm-hmm.
that means it's just a snap before they get into the atrocity stage.
Mm-hmm.
And so this summer, I'm asking everybody, stock up on your food, stock up on your medicine, find your boo thing that you could partner with, your relatives that you could hang out with, because things, if we look at that chart,
yeah,
it's predicting some pretty hard times ahead of us.
I believe it. Shaquilla and then Miss Amy.
Hi everyone. Jim, I've got the speaker on right here. I'm sorry, we're in the same place. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yep, I hear you.
So, as far as what we're doing today, I think that we have to hold everybody accountable.
Mm-hmm.
We have had I can't find it. That echo was killing me. Yeah. See, let me see. Yeah, that's better. We have to hold people accountable, and I think in the past, up until very recently, we have just been very complacent with allowing people to have so many allowances. We have allowed people to not hold their friends and their families accountable. We have been giving too many people, too much benefit of the doubt. Now, when you have someone who is a bigot, who works with you, or someone who may be part of your inner circle of friend or family, maybe they're unconscious of it or whatever the case may be, a lot of us have just been giving them too much leeway, and it has been going on for too long. For example, we may just say, oh, that's just the way that person is. Oh, forgive that person because they don't know. Okay, well, if they don't know, then someone needs to tell them, right? And if that's not maybe your direct friend or family, but it's a friend of a friend, you need to hold your friend accountable for the people that they're around, because we are the company we keep, and we can't keep allowing people to just not see the things that they are doing as having a negative impact on others. From our language to the clothes we wear, if it has specific signages, like those people who want to wear those caps, to the type of people that they might like, that entertainers or actors who are obviously said unsavory things about the Black community. And we have to also be specific when we're talking about our community, because if we're not specific when it comes to talking about our community, then everybody's going to want to jump in and join the bandwagon when it's convenient for them. So we have to have that specific language about us, and we have to hold other people accountable, even when we say Black and brown. Why are we always saying Black and brown? Does everybody who's brown always say Black and brown? No. You could count on your hand how many people from other communities mention Black people. Even though we have made all these strides and we have sacrificed so much so that everyone can have a piece of the so-called American pie, so everyone can have a so-called piece of civil rights. We have made those strides. We have made those sacrifices. We have made those compromises. Not to say that there was no one else to contribute, but we contributed the most. and we should not be shy about our contributions to the development of of the nation, whether it's from the infrastructure, the architecture, the economy, everything, arts, music, everything that this country is built on what we have, what we did. And some of it, those stories will never be told because that was erased from the history. But I think that we have to be unapologetic about who we are, our
Mm.
contributions, and also holding people accountable for their language and their positions. And stop saying sorry all the time. Stop saying black and brown all the time. If I'm talking about my family, I'm not talking about the whole world's family, because the whole world's family ain't talking about us. The whole world ain't concerned about us. So why are we so concerned about everybody else and bending over backwards so that everyone can be pleased with what we're doing? No, that has to stop. I'm going to
Absolutely.
put someone else's kids before my own. What sense does that make?
Yeah. And goodness gracious. Miss Amy, that was well said, Shaquilla.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you.
Rodney, I saw that same program you did, and I talk about it all the time. The one thing I can say is we're so far behind.
Mhm.
This didn't start last year. This started 10, 15 years ago. They have been planning, plotting, putting people in position
Mhm.
to carry out what they're doing. And that picture, like I say, it scared the crap out of me watching to see that one person could get in there and do it. And the leader was in prison doing all of this from prison and telling them what to do, and they were following his. And their biggest problem right now is Trump, because Trump is not patient. He's crazy. He's not patient, but he has the right mentality to carry out what they want. But
Right.
Trump is exposing everything they're trying to do. So it's weird, and it's been about 30 years they've been planning what they're doing now. That's
Absolutely.
why they're able to get through with it. And we're not even ready. We're not even ready to deal with it.
No, we're
You know,
not.
Miss Amy, there's actually a movie, a documentary that lays out the timeline of where we are today and when it started. And they say, according to this documentary, 1972, they have been plotting this and planning this since 1972. Think about that. Over 50 years, they've had some setbacks. They didn't lose focus. They got beat back, but they didn't give up. They stuck with it until eventually they got stuff removed from the Voting Rights Act. They got stuff removed from affirmative action. And then they got Roe v. Wade went down. Roe v. Wade, people think, oh, is mean men and predominantly white men against women. That is a part of it. But once again, if you look at the history of it, it was really another unfortunate attack on Black people using white supremacy. And because they couldn't go directly after Black people because of the Civil Rights Act and some of the other legislation that was passed, racism was actually going out of favor. So there was a group of people who decided to make a deal with rich people and said, we can lower your taxes if you will fund this movement. And this movement is going to be through evangelicals. This is how they got the religious right involved. And we're going to go after abortion because they're killing babies. So the anti-abortion movement was really a cover for anti-Black movement. That's what it was about. And so knowing the history of these things is hugely important. And I have some books that will back that up, that anti-abortion, because remember, evangelicals used to be on the boards of abortion organizations. So evangelicals said that life began with the first breath because that's what it said in the Bible. So why would they be after it now? It's simply because They couldn't go after Black people at the time like they wanted to. So they developed a boogeyman, or in this case, the boogeyman was the straw man of abortion that was just a stand-in for being against Black people, because they affixed abortions to Black people, even though Black people didn't get the most abortions, and then they demonized it. Like the current president demonizes and otherizes immigrants and anybody else that's not rich white people.
Really quick. So Elizabeth said on our Facebook, and everyone, hey Tracy, Tracy's on the Facebook Live. Elizabeth said that El Salvador deportations are the first step to atrocities. And then Courtney says to remember also the attack on organized labor, especially in civil service.
What did Pastor Molnar's poem, right? First they came for the communists, but I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists, but I wasn't a trade unionist. And then it goes through and he says, then they came for me and there was no one left to speak for me. Well, he is going down that list. You know, it's anti-Muslim, right? Now it's anti-immigrant. Well, some of the people that he's deporting, just like what Hitler did it, they're not illegal. They're not criminals. Some of them are American citizens. We are allowing that to happen. So to your point earlier and Sister Shaquila's commentary earlier, this is a time when we need to stand up. And we do need to recognize that all of this is about us. So when they're going after the immigrant, that is our business, because it's softening the environment up so that they can come after us.
Exactly. And here's the three things I wanted to say before we leave. And if you have to tune off, please do. If you have to leave, just let us know. I wanted to talk about the 45 universities that are being investigated. I wanted to talk about Stacey Abrams really quick, the comment that she made. But right now, I don't know if you all saw, and you know, I'm very particular about what news outlets I look at because there's a lot of not credible sources, okay? But this is coming from NPR. The title is Segregated Facilities Are No Longer Explicitly Banned in Federal Contracts. The first paragraph says, after a recent change by the Trump administration, the federal government no longer explicitly prohibits contractors from having segregated restaurants, waiting rooms, and drinking fountains. And let me tell you, we went to go look at houses in a neighborhood, predominantly white neighborhood. And when I tell you that the white people who were walking, nobody said hi to us. And you know me, listen, I'm pettiest of all petties. So I'm not going to speak either. But that's where people who are subscribing to this is what they want. So if you haven't seen that coming across your phone as a news blast or whatever, make sure you get connected to news organizations that you can get this stuff or whatever. And I know that some people are probably like overwhelmed with all of this information, but it's happening. Whether or not some of this stuff can get through the law, the fact is, this is the thought that the people in power have. And so that's something that we always, and this is why what Shaquilla was saying, I totally agree with, and everything that Mr. Rodney is saying is I totally agree with it. This is not the time to like be silent and not celebrate Blackness and not be in support of diversity. This is not the time for that. Like, oh, it's going to die out. No, it's not. The negativity, the hatred is going to get louder and louder and louder if we say nothing. And if you haven't had an opportunity to listen to Stacey Abrams has a podcast called Assembly Required. And in one of her conversations, it was a while ago when I heard it, but she made a very interesting comment. She was basically saying that we keep referring to Republicans and this group as MAGA. And she's like, no, she basically was saying we need to stop separating MAGA from Republicans. She was like, because that's who they are right now. And I thought about that and I was like, oh, she was like, MAGA is the adjective to describe them. But it's like we have kind of this separation for Republicans. And listen, I am confused as I'll get out. If you are Republican, I am absolutely confused about who you are. And you need to identify yourself and separate yourself if that's the case. All you people talking about some eggs, this was never about eggs. You got to be kidding me. You bought cars, you buy houses. Those are way more expensive than eggs. So we're not buying, and we never have bought that thought that you voting for 47, who is a white supremacist, who is showing that in day 1 and 2 of his executive orders of dismantling, trying to dismantle civil rights, and then banning words. Now, I have to fact check this, but allegedly there's a banning of the word Black.
Yep.
I didn't fact check it, but
It no longer exists. Poof, it's gone.
No, there's no other color. It's Black. So you can't sit here and tell me that this is not a war against Black people. And I'm not going to, be silent and all this other stuff and make white people feel uncomfortable. If you are not a white supremacist, I'm not talking about you. If you are an ally to Black people, I'm not talking about you. And it may be uncomfortable because, it's your people or your family member. I'm not talking about you, but I'm not going to stop saying white supremacy, and we're not going to stop saying it because that's what we are experiencing right now. And I hope that the hope for me is that you're able, because I hear people say, oh, no, there's no racism. No, it doesn't exist. We're in 2025, 2024. If you cannot see this, what's happening right now to Black people, if you can't see it, then you're ignoring it. You're a part of it, or what is it? You're either ignoring it or you're a part of it. Period. Because you can't get more. It can't be more identifying than erasing the word Black. We're taking out Medgar Evers. We're talking about the segregation. Are you kidding me? And then 45 universities, y'all. The news called me, Review Journal called me to talk about this. The 45 universities that are linked to a project called the PhD Project. So basically the PhD Project was designed to but to allow opportunity for marginalized communities, people of color to earn PhDs. I believe it's in the field of business. So all of the universities that had this PhD project are being investigated. Okay. So, and then here's some of the institutions. I have some of the institutions. So let me just, Yale University. Yale University is predominantly white. That's not a HBCU. It's not a historically Black college. It's not a Hispanic serving institution. That's a white university, predominantly white. Okay. So even just a little bit of trying to get Black people in and Hispanic people in and Asian people in, or whoever else falls under the marginalized group, y'all don't even want that. So listen, we have to wake up. We got to stay woke. We have to message and we have to do the work. Those are my final thoughts. Goodness gracious, y'all. I don't know. I go just every night when I get ready to go to bed, I'm just shaking my head. Like, I can't believe that we're in this moment. And the constitutional crisis, another constitutional crisis was the fact that the judge ordered that plane with the Venezuelans not to leave, and they left. And then that blonde bimbo, what is the communications director, she's talking about the secretary. Yeah. She's talking about the plane. First of all, she said the plane left the US soil before the order was given. And then she said, but our lawyers, we're trying to determine whether or not an oral order has as much weight as a written one. from a judge. That's the bombfoolery that I'm talking about. That's the stuff we can't be silent about, because people are going to believe, oh, well, if a judge says, a judge has to write it down. No, the judge gave the order. So these people don't care about the law, but they care about the law when it's Black people.
So they have never cared about the law, only when they could use it against Black people. Just like they never cared about the Constitution, only when they can bludgeon Black people with it. Because we have always been the most law-abiding. As a matter of fact, we have been so law-abiding that they had to make up laws to incarcerate us, because we would always stand by the law. So this is what I want people to do. If I could say, Rodney, what's one thing? One thing. I would say, call it what it is.
Absolutely.
Racism and white supremacy.
It is.
Just call it what it is. And for all of the white people who say they're not racist, okay. But if racists are around you and you allow them to be racist, if you allow white supremacy to thrive, then you become complicit in the racism and white supremacy. If you believe that it's antithetical to the founding principles of this country, then push back against it. Don't accept it, because it could not exist if all of you good white people did not keep your mouths closed and sit down. If you spoke up against it and you acted up against it, it wouldn't exist. That's just a reality. It exists because the good white people allow it. Maybe you all need to read Letter from Birmingham Jail. Yeah. Maybe you need to reread that.
So Courtney says on Facebook, she said, it was never about eggs or gas. This is what they've always wanted. They didn't practice their beliefs because they were afraid of economic sanctions because of legislation. But now they don't have to. You can't legislate the heart. Ooh, Courtney, you better come through that right there. Will preach. You can't legislate the heart. So we can't, yeah.
And I have to add this part. It's not only white people. We have to educate some of our Black people, because just because they think they got a little money and they think they got a little class, it's not affecting them yet. And Absolutely. I've had that conversation with quite a few of them and I don't care who you are. If he gets rid of all the Black people, he gonna go after somebody else. This man is just a lunatic.
Absolutely.
And he's just going to keep going down the road. So, but right now, I can name about 5 or 6 Black folks now who like, oh, well, it's okay. It's not okay.
No, it's not okay. And that's the point that I actually made at the school board meeting, is that white supremacy doesn't have to be coming down the tunnels from white people. Okay. Black people can, what is the word I'm looking for? Can be guilty of white supremacist ideologies and colonialism, just like a white person can. At this point, this is not about, it doesn't have to be about color. I mean, on the school board, you have a Hispanic woman, Lorena, who is a Trumpster, who's Hispanic, and she boils down everything white supremacy.
Well, let's keep in mind that you're absolutely right. White supremacy does not have to be perpetuated by white people.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
And we also know that there's a guy that's been appointed, I think his name is something Terrell. He's a Black guy, supposed to be a civil rights lawyer, who is in Trump's cabinet. And he just posted an anti-Semitic trope, reposted it. So we had a person at the gathering that's a MAGA person and came out and said it. And he's as Black as me. So, but it's the ideology of white supremacy. And I don't want that to be conflated with anything else. It is the ideology of white supremacy that is destroying this country today. Absolutely. It is the white supremacy ideology that leads into xenophobia. It is the white supremacy ideology that is anti-Semitic. And when I say anti-Semitic this time, I'm talking about the real Semitic people of of Gaza right now, who he said they just need to leave. Don't care what country you go to, you just need to leave.
Help
He
us.
even said in this country, well, you know, the Constitution doesn't apply to Indians. They can be deported too. So, of course, it begs the question, where are you going to deport them to? This is their land that we took. But this is about white supremacy ideology. And though predominantly white people they are the progenitors of it, but it can be perpetuated by anyone. And the unfortunate thing, going back to the following, Joe Carroll, and how you started off with the cultish behavior, is that white supremacy, it is a white supremacy cult. That is what it is. And that white supremacy cult, until you address it, like any disease, will continue to spread and kill the body, just like a cancer. This is white supremacy.
That is a great note to end on. This is it. This is what we're dealing with in America. And it is absolutely so important that we keep elevating our voices and just being heard. Oh, I did have one more thing. So there's some man babies out here by the name of Eldon and Leonard, who apparently are still harassing me well after the campaign. But I got something for y'all. So don't wait. I mean, whatever. Anywho,
share those posts with us.
Yeah, so somebody actually it was Vicky Crydell. She posted something on Facebook. I'm not even paying attention to what these people are talking about, but she had posted me and tagged me and was asking the community to block them because they're still apparently attacking me and harassing me. So I want you all to know, it's people like that, bullies and white supremacists like these two white men who are trolling me even in March. This is the reason why I'm going to continue to run for office. If I have to run 20, 40, 30, 100 times, you're going to see my name on the ballot, period. Because one, you know that with me, I will fight for you. I have empathy for you and I will do the work. And that is what we need right now. You will definitely see my name on a ballot. That's why that's why I'm focusing in to finish my dissertation so that when it's time to go, it is time to go. And this next time we going 10 times harder. And we're going to have so much fun building community. And I do want to let Summerlin know that as soon as I finish my dissertation, we're going to be doing some community cookouts, some events in Summerlin so we can build community, so we can break bread together. You all can learn more about me and really get to know me because there's these false narratives out here. And really, these people are scared of me. They're saying things on the computer with dog faces and cat faces that they would never say in person. Like, come on now, you see me in person and like, there's this picture that I really want to show. I have to find this picture. It was like a picture of a person. And then the bullies like yelling at the picture of the person. And then when they see the person in person, they kind of like go and hide and cower. So these two man babies, once I get their pictures, I'm going to post their pictures up. But anywho, that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to let you all know I'm running until I win. I'm going to be out here for you, serving our community, speaking truth to power. Thank you so much for joining us this Tuesday. If you want to join the show, if you have a topic you would like to talk about, please let us know. We would love to have you on. We'll see you next Tuesday. Have a wonderful, wonderful Tuesday. Talk to you soon.